Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Play Breakers podcast. My name is Anthony. I'm joined by my good buddies, Q and Tom.
Welcome back, Otto.
Oh,
Welcome back to reality, Gatto.
It still doesn't feel like reality. I got to be honest.
You have entered the Matrix again.
You've been blue-pilled back in.
I am happy to have entered the Matrix. Like, put that spiny thing back in me. Put me in the fucking fluid pod, whatever the fuck it is. I am happy to be back here. I got to be honest.
You never get so patriotic except for when you're out of the country and you miss the things that you have, and you're like, "Fuck everywhere else, I'm here."
Yeah. Why do we have these plugs? Can't you just speak American plugs?
Yeah, I mean, there was cool things too. The food, like I think I was telling you guys before this, was kind of out of control, wild to me. And I'm pretty open. Like, I'll eat a lot of things. I'll try things.
You're an adventurous eater.
Yeah, and some things were just far too adventurous for me.
You said powder. What was it? Sugar on pizza crust, and I'm like, that's, as an Italian, I take umbrage with that.
And here's the crazy thing about that, right? So it was a bulgogi pizza. They used it was almost like pastry, like croissant dough for the crust, and then there was powdered sugar on the outside. Now, I was in Korea, folks. So
Which part?
South Korea.
Let's clarify that.
Seoul. Yes.
Were you hanging out with Kim Jong?
No. He declined our meeting. But
we got him next time.
Yeah, apparently he didn't want to talk football with me, so
get him on the pod.
Yeah.
Huge fan of the show, by the way. That Kim Jong-un.
I don't think we want to telecast that. But
depends on who wins the election next year.
Yeah, that's true. But I will say, Korea, it is a cool place. Everyone is super friendly, super polite, nice, all those good things. It's a country full of very gracious hosts. They're just marvelous people, and they have a very unique culture. And I'm
fantastic
glad
people. We love them. They're amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, the some of the pizza stuff you were telling me is just like, I'm like, that's
almost sacrilegious. I don't know if you can do that.
And it was one of the better
would
things
try, by the way.
Which is crazy. But
just throwing it out there, would try. But
yeah, I mean, I'd give it like a 4 out of 10 would try slice.
One bite, everybody knows the rules.
Yeah. That was actually a weird thing about that was like it wasn't altogether terrible. It was just sometimes you're just getting like very unique flavor combinations that you would never expect. Like we would buy bags of chips, we'd have to snack in the trailers and stuff. And we would like open a bag of chips and be like, oh, this is supposed to be like spicy chili. And then there's like a sugary sweet hit that just doesn't mesh. And you're like, why?
Which is so weird because typically in like Eastern countries isn't like I remember hearing that like even like Oreos and like Coca-Cola are less sugary because they typically don't like the sweet, like it's like universally they don't really like sweeter things. So I find that weird, right?
In South Korea, they do love their sweet. In a traditional, like, we sat down, we had a traditional barbecue meal, with the grill in the middle of the table, and you had all your different fixings of kimchi and different things.
That's my type of event right there.
Yeah, and almost all the dishes were savory there, and it was a great meal. We had some awesome hosts from LG that actually showed us this great place, and took us around and showed us how to drink. Because over there, their beer's not great, but when you mix it with soju, you get like a sake bomb.
Yeah, and that's good.
They showed us this cool trick where you take your what are those things? Chopsticks.
Oh, those things.
Damn, I'm jet lagged. And you put them in, and then you slap them together, and it creates this like bubble effect, right?
That's sick.
And it actually makes the the beer and the soju mixture taste better. It really does. That foam, I don't know what it does, but it did some nice stuff.
Dude, I love sake.
Yeah, and it's basically that.
Yeah.
They also it's like raspberry wine there that was pretty killer and was
That's
strong
awesome.
wine. It was like 18%.
18?
18.
Oh my god.
Doesn't burn or anything from it either, though, so it goes down way too easy.
Dangerous.
It's true medicine.
Well,
But,
glad to see you're back.
yeah, I'm surviving. I'm a little jet lagged, folks, so you'll
That's
have
all
to
good.
forgive me when I
Yeah,
have
that's
giant voids and absences of conversation. But there, as a segue, there is definitely a lack of there's not a lack of conversation going on right now, as the NFL has had its annual team meetings. Those were in Orlando this week. Guys, first reactions. Tom,
Meh.
meh. What a reaction!
I mean, they're team meetings. Like, what are you gonna do with those? I think there wasn't anything that came out of those that I was not anticipating. I think the real draw is going to be what were some of the rule changes that happened associated with that. Because I mean, you could watch one of those and you could probably supplement it for like the past 5 or 6 years. It's all coach speak and like what they're intending to do. The Jerry Jones scatterbrain drawing
Was that the most interesting thing?
that could be the most interesting that came out of the winter meetings, and I'm just wondering if he actually just has like coconuts for brains,
or his brains are turning to coconuts. I mean,
yeah. I
he's
mean,
been at it for quite a long time now, trying to make that team
That was so funny.
go back to its former glory.
Or maybe that's his like secret writing method, and he knows exactly what it means when we're all fools.
that could be it too. Yeah.
Probably not, but well. So then the first thing that kind of came glaringly clear is that they are really focused on banning what they refer to as hip drop tackles, and I don't understand this at all because this also like kind of correlates to me with the new kickoff rule that's being proposed, is because a couple years ago they changed the kickoff rule to the 25, which obviously results in a hell of a lot of like essentially fair catches or ball being kicked out of the end zone, which just basically spots the ball. They did that out of safety, quote unquote, trying to mitigate concussions, trying to stop head injuries altogether. And it seemingly didn't really have, like, as far as I've seen in the statistics, it didn't really change anything as far as concussions are concerned. So now they're trying to do this like XFL style kickoff rule that looks almost like a punt after a safety, those like those little like mini punts. And it's just so stupid to me because this looks like it's going to, because they're so much closer together now and there's no fair catches involved, it looks like it's going to create more collisions than it would before. So how are we going to ban hip drop tackles to, again, safety, change the kickoff rule for safety, and now we're just going in the complete opposite direction for kickoffs? It just doesn't make any sense to me.
I mean, to the first of, so I don't know, where do we start? I guess maybe hip drops. We'll start there, right? And I also have trouble grasping like how are referees in real time going to be able to assess that was the hip drop technique and nothing else, right?
Yeah.
And that's where I wonder if this won't end up being necessarily, if it's blatant hip drop, yes, there'll be a penalty assessed at that moment. If not, it will be similar to when a player gets a like a retroactive fine.
That's
after.
what I read. Yeah.
So according to the NFL, quote, the hip drop tackle question involves a swivel technique in which a player grabs the runner with both hands or wraps the runner with both arms and unweights himself by swiveling and dropping his hips and or lower body and landing on trapping the runner's legs below the knee. So essentially when you're basically grabbing them and then you pretty much like go dead weight. So you're essentially using your force of your body, your dead weight, to stop a player's momentum, and then essentially kind of also trapping a player's legs underneath your body. So I think it's going to be hard because, like, in the heat of the moment, that can happen. So
For sure, especially if, you've mistackled a little bit and you're behind on the
right,
tackle, and now
you're
it's
trying to
you
stop it.
or
Yeah,
them scoring a touchdown, right?
exactly. Yeah, you're going to
Um,
see guys let go pretty much. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
and I sorry, Tom, go for it.
Well, I was going to say, I think the issue is right now is you're continuing to limit the ability for defenders to tackle guys. Like, so what is the actual like action plan to ensure that, if somebody breaks a tackle and is on the run, that a safety, a cornerback, or a linebacker can bring them down? I mean, we have the horse collar, which, I mean, is fair.
I think it's fine.
It's funny
Or
because
tackle.
I equate this to like a lower body horse collar. Like that's kind of how I see this as, right? Like that's what they're kind of treating it as.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think now it's what tools do defenders have at their disposal? Because I mean, I know that they're going to be giving these penalties or fines retroactively. I don't know if they're necessarily going to be stopping games and throwing flags, because I think they're going to have to review all of these tackles. And also think about the personnel that you're going to need to review every tackle like that. Figure there's 10, 15, 20 of these during a game. And then you have an entire slate of games that are occurring. Like, how long is it going to take for people to like parse through these, and who's going to be kind of the arbiter who decides like, this is a hip drop tackle, this is not okay, this was a tackle from behind, this is fine. This is kind of an issue that the NFL has had for the last couple of years, is they can just continue to regulate. They continue to regulate a sport that is already on its face a very violent sport. And there's not a whole lot of options for defenders to hit now. And I'm also going to look at like between the lines when the NFL said that they were not happy that this was a lower scoring season than in previous years. And I just like, I can connect the dots here, and I hope other people can too. But it's very shady how this is being done with not a whole lot of explanation. And first off, this is like, why is this like a huge issue after 1 year? Like, this is now a big thing. And I would argue that the whole horse collar tackle thing is only because T.O. broke his leg. Like, that's the only time where I've seen that actually happen where somebody was injured.
It's very much a protect your investments thing. I think also
Mark Andrews was injured on it this year.
Yeah, that's the big one they cited was the Mark Andrews one. That's the one that the clips they kept bringing up to show of like what they're outlawing, what they're banning here.
Yeah.
I've also seen guys get non-contact injuries too. Are we going to ban the ground too?
In MetLife, yes.
I mean, yeah, I should ban the MetLife turf for sure.
Why aren't we fine? Oh, that's a better question. Like, why aren't we finding teams with shitty fields? Like, if that's the case, like Dan Snyder is about to go broke with the amount of people that got their knees and legs and ankles torn up on that thing.
Tom, I think you need to go to the team meeting next year and bring this up.
Yeah, if anybody wants to fund a Playbreakers representative to ask the hard questions at the team meetings, I am a Delta and American Airlines rewards member, so I will be using those.
We'll start a GoFundMe after this. Get
that sounds
Tom
fantastic.
to the team meetings next year. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. When the owners go there, they have certain priorities. That certain priorities, certain values in which their voting aligns with, right? And making sure that their investments stay as protected as possible, and making sure the games are as exciting to the fan as humanly possible, because those are the two things that mean the most to their bottom line, right? And like, I think you nailed it right on that. And I was going to say the same thing. I was like, hey, the closer we move towards flag football, the more touchdowns we're just going to see. And that's just what it's going to be, right? And
I don't know if you guys saw this, but it was floating around Twitter, that video from Mike Mitchell from a couple years ago where he was talking about like the fines that he was going to receive because he was talking about a game against when he played for the Steelers. He was talking about a game when they played against the Bengals where Andy Dalton threw a bad pass and Tyler Eifert had to dive for this ball. And Mike Mitchell was already in the process of trying to tackle him. He hit him in the head. And Mitchell's like, why am I being penalized because your quarterback sucks and is throwing bad balls and getting guys injured? He's like, we should just take the pads off now. And like, my livelihood is getting hurt because your quarterback is shit. And hearing that now is also really reflective because we're effectively regulating defense out of the game. So now it's like the biggest culprits of this are going to be guys in the defensive line or rush linebackers or pass rushers.
You just see it on corners. Yeah, like I feel like corners tend to be the guys that are making these types of tackles because they don't have the size sometimes with like a running back. You know?
Yeah,
what I mean?
but if you look at a lot of the sacks that they highlighted in there, it's
a hip drops as well.
It's a hip drop from the sense of like a tackle and somebody fell down. For me, I don't buy it. I think it's kind of a veiled attempt to continue to regulate defense out of the sport and make the games more exciting by having.
And this is not new either. Like this has been a long time coming. This is kind of just feels like a culmination of everything because you can go back to the Ty Law rule, you know, in which like essentially defensive backs can no longer, you know, interfere with the receiver after 5 yards and everything is pass interference. And like, even like, look at the scope of the game. Guys on defense have gotten smaller. Like back in the day, linebackers were Jeremiah Trotter, you know, who was 6'3", 275 pounds at middle linebacker. Now a 275 pound guy is not sniffing linebacker. You know, maybe an edge rusher, maybe, you know, something like that, but you're going to be playing D-line. You're going to be a defensive tackle nowadays. So
yeah, Jared Verse, you were a right outside linebacker in 2004.
Yeah. Yeah, he was a weak side backer, you know, like, and now he's going to be an edge rusher. So, but yeah, I mean, like, and you started to see those money backers, you know, like Deion Buchanan in Arizona, you know, like the 6'1", 230 pound linebacker, because the game is more based on athleticism. Now you have to be more athletic to make plays rather than just being a guy who can, you know, tackle people. Like you have to like more interfere with the ball. Which, I mean, listen, the game has evolved, and I don't think it's a bad product. I still think the NFL is exciting. It still has good games and everything like that. But, like, if you're just going to take tackling completely out of it, that's where you're going to see, like, a really drastic change.
Yeah.
This feels like a rule it's going to be gone after a year because they're not going to know. It's not that it's not a good rule or a bad rule. They just don't have any way of really legislating it, you know?
I think quantifying too the effectiveness of this rule. This is why they're going back and they're changing the kickoff rules again, right? Because they went a little too far in the wrong direction in, I think, player safety, and they realized it actually doesn't make the plays safer.
No.
It just makes the occasion that play occurs less likely, right? And that's not technically making the game safer.
No.
So,
This feels like the pass interference reviewable rule. You know, when they made that pass interference reviewable, and then like no one figured out, like, they still got it wrong even after reviewing it and everything, and they were just like, we're scrapping this shit. This feels like after a year they're gonna be like, this didn't seem like it helped at all. You know, guys are still getting tackled and we don't know what is what, so we're just gonna reverse it.
Yeah. And hey, you know, sometimes it is more art than science, right? Even in this day and age with all the advanced analytics that they got going on. I am interested to see though how the new kickoff rules do change the kickoff and how teams, one, strategize for it, and two, if it creates new excitement in the game, if it's actually going to do anything to enhance the actual game we watch, right? Do you guys feel these moves? Have you seen some of it from XFL? Because it's essentially the XFL rules.
You're
Do you guys
basically
feel
creating a wall. And it's like, so essentially, I think they're kicking off at their own 35.
the
And
kickoff
then
doesn't move, but the kicking teams tacklers, for lack of a better word, um, they start down at, I believe it's is it the 35 or the 40?
I think it's the 30. So the kicker will kick the ball from his own 35-yard line, which is different than the 25, right? So I think that there is a slight difference there. 10 of his teammates will line up on the other team's 40-yard line. The receiving team's 9 or 10 blockers will line up on their own 35-yard line. It's already starting to get. The kick must land between the 20-yard line and the goal line. A kick that either goes out of bounds or lands short will be awarded the receiving team at the 40-yard line, which is basically the same as it is now, where it's like, an illegal kick. A kick that goes in the end zone for a touchback will go to the receiving team's 30-yard line. So that is moving up a little bit.
Yeah.
Apparently the XFL had good statistics with this reducing injuries. I don't know how that's possible. Because it's going to initiate more contact than there is now. So, but I am personally excited that the kickoffs will be relevant again because, and by the way, Pittsburgh just signed Cordell Patterson a couple hours ago. Good move, right before the news came through.
2 years, $6 million.
Not bad.
Good for Cordell.
Yeah. I always like Cordell Patterson, one of the better kick returners in the game. I'm excited to see like kickoffs be a thing because, like, honestly, like,
they're a non-factor.
Yeah, it's and honestly, that's a cool, like, the thing about kickoffs that's not talked about enough, like, because we talk about like player safety when it really didn't do anything. That's how a lot of these guys make the teams.
Right.
It's being
Special
effort
teams.
on, gunner or like just like a kick returner. Devin Hester's not in the fucking Hall of Fame if it's not for kickoffs and stuff. So it's I'm glad to see at least like the elements coming back. I think it was a mistake when they did that before.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I agree. I'm curious to see how it goes the first couple of games because ultimately, like, you can miss like kickoffs because they don't happen anymore. And I'm as soon as you said that, Gatto, like, I'd make the team. Like, I'm thinking about like Ike Reese, a guy who was a Pro Bowler for years because he was a special teams guy, or Dante Hall being another guy. I just think that they've regulated that.
Arian Foster.
I mean, he like started there and was able to make his way into the starting rotation for their running back core. And I'm glad to see something is coming back, although I don't necessarily know how it addresses the safety issue, which the NFL is really focused on, especially if you have guys hitting each other at close. And then what does that mean for the tackles and the hip drops? I want to go back to that for 1 second, Gatto, because I was looking something up over here because I was very curious to see how many actually happened across the league last year. An NFL executive, Jeff Miller, this is from the LA Times, from Sam Farmer, said an NFL executive, Jeff Miller, said hip drop tackles occurred 230 times last season, up 65% from the previous year, and resulted in 15 players missing time. That sounds bad if you know how to like make data sound scary. Bobby Wagner had 183 tackles on his own. And I tried to find a way to get the collective tackles that occurred across the NFL last year. And believe it or not, that's not a stat you can find because they don't do culmination numbers or anything like that. But if you have Bobby Wagner with 183, Zaire Franklin with 179, Alex Singleton 177, and probably 20, 30 guys with 100 plus, one could make the argument that there is a lot of tackling that is happening in the NFL, and 215 or 230, however much that number was, that doesn't seem like a lot comparative to the number that's actually taking place.
Yeah. How many plays are there on average in a football game?
Feels like 60 or something.
Yeah, 60, 65. It kind of lives in that number.
Yeah. So, I mean, if you think about that, and then you think about if you're saying that about 200 tackles a team's experiencing. I mean, this is something that's happening less than 10%, right?
Maybe less than that too.
Yeah, I mean, across the entire NFL. I don't know. A few years back, remember they did that low ankle. They also banned that low ankle twisting tackle that had become prevalent, where you kind of latched on and then rolled on the ankles because it was basically tweaking everybody's kneecap.
Yeah.
I don't I don't recall many people executing it properly, which there could be an inherent danger of mis-executing a hip drop tackle too, right?
Yeah.
And that's I don't think any players really out there. I mean, there's probably a few, but I highly doubt players are out there like actively looking to injure, other players, especially because they've played with, these guys and they've seen these guys or what have you in Pro Bowls and and
It just
whatnot.
doesn't seem logical, right? Like, it
Yeah.
just doesn't seem logical that, like, especially now, like, I feel like it's more of a brotherhood than it was even back then, because like it seems like there were some crazy motherfuckers in the '80s that were like definitely trying to hurt people, and not that there aren't
Mhm.
today. Like Vontez Perfect, even like 10 years ago, that
Yeah.
dude was headhunting. I don't
Hmm.
think I've seen anything in the last few years where it felt like, I'm trying to even think of a situation in which I was like, man, that was a dirty ass hit. I can't
Hmm.
even really necessarily think of it.
I mean,
Yeah.
like it was the Dom King Su, kind of like I want to hurt you kind of attitude that's
Yeah,
kind
the
of gone
stepping on him.
away.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the Players Association, I think they root that stuff out and they try to get ahead of it and you know get
I think
players
it
away from that
the
attitude.
I think the fines and the discipline structure has just made it financially disadvantage, like not an advantageous thing to do. Particularly if guys can be ejected from games now, if they can be suspended, if they can be fined. Because I would imagine there's going to be some shitty team out there that's going to incorporate like personal fouls into like contracts and incentives, angles. And so it's not a financially smart move to do that. And I'm sure like guys are going to want to be able to defend their teammates, but in the reality, it's like, hey man, I gotta protect my pocket too.
Hmm. Then there's much more of that these days, right? I think as contracts have become more of a center focus, I think, for players, and the media pays more attention to them now than ever before. And
Mm-hmm.
I think I think pay structure and everything, that players are more concerned with those bottom lines because especially in a game where your paychecks are fleeting, right? Your next play could be the last one, right? You have to worry about your income.
Yeah. I found something else.
Was there any other interesting takeaways that you guys found from the the team meetings?
A lot of attention being put on the Jets. And I know that we talked about them a couple weeks,
Yeah.
but um, I think they're gonna feel the pressure come the start of the season too, because I know that a lot of reporters were generating a lot of conversation around Robert Saleh, Aaron Rodgers, and like what they're trying to build for that team. I I mean, Q and I had talked about it too. I don't think we see it. There's a lot of things that need to go right for that team, but ultimately, like I feel like it's a media darling that's going to be a lovely 4-13 or 5-12 team.
It's the classic like King Henry Shakespearean play, like the here you have this like team that is kind of coming together, and they're kind of they're very much an all in one kind of one and done team too, right? Like they're not going to have many shots at it with their personnel at this
No,
point, right?
yeah,
And I think everyone's looking at it like you have some elite players here now. Like this is a team that has the potential, but do they actually carry out their potential? And I think a lot of people are waiting for that downfall to just kind of laugh at it because it's like that running joke that never gets old. and
their future hinges on the future vice president actually being able to come back and play this year.
That's a big part of it.
No, because I mean, ultimately, like the Jets are just so funny to me because I just don't see how this ends well for them. I just don't see it. Like, because you're already seeing the cracks, right? You're relying on a 40-year-old man who just tore his Achilles and thinks dolphin noises helps cure it to save your franchise. You hire Hackett, right, to be the OC, and he's terrible. I mean, like, again, like clearly just like Sean Payton shouldn't have said it, but he was right.
But you guys are forgetting something. If Aaron Rodgers becomes a presidential candidate or vice presidential candidate, of course he can. But now he's going to have a Secret Service detail on the field with him.
They're like protecting him in the pocket. They're like,
there'll be better run blocker.
Imagine you get like arrested for like trying to assassinate the president.
They're just tasing players down the field.
I think it's going to be very important to note that somebody who brings Aaron Rodgers down, or it's like a late hit out of bounds, like ends up being sent to Rikers Island shortly after that. And it's like in a military tribunal.
He just goes, send him to Guantanamo. I want him in Guantanamo. It's so funny.
He's just shattering all of Tom Brady's fucking records by fear.
Hip drop and presidential decree. That's how the Jets win.
There we go.
The Super Bowl.
I just really just don't see how this ends well for them. Honestly, I just don't like it. It doesn't seem like it's going to be anything that's going to really like work out well for them. The Lazard signing was already a disaster. The Rodgers signing essentially is a disaster right now until he can come back and play more than 4 plays. They haven't really done anything on the offensive line that I'm like, you signed Tyron Smith. Cool. Old. It would have been nice 5 or 6 years ago. But like, is he going to give you more than 8 or 9 games?
He gives you some depth.
I mean,
some depth.
Do they re-sign? What's his name? The fucking tackle they drafted a couple years ago that is just a waste of space.
John Simpson?
No.
They did sign him though.
Let go of Laken Tomlinson. I just don't see anything significant on the offensive line, honestly.
Fotu? I would say his name wrong.
So
Gurman?
Are you just saying random names now?
No, these are offensive linemen for the Jets.
So Laken Tomlinson is gone, and then there's also Mekhi Becton. Only 24. I understand they're probably kind of sick of him at this point, but they lose Bryce Huff. So they signed John Simpson from Baltimore, and then Jake Hansen, who was just a 1 year, 1 point, pretty much a depth signing, and then Tyron Smith got one. Yeah. I don't see.
They're all about the short term vision, right? They're all.
I don't think they can get locked up. I don't think they can get locked up in a long term deal with anybody though, because Aaron Rodgers has kind of taken a lot of the money.
He is a significant boulder over their head right now.
And that money should go to the other guys. Like you're going to have to sign Sauce Gardner and Garrett Wilson pretty soon too. I mean, it's going to be really expensive if they want to franchise tag them, and they can't do both because they're
Breece Hall too.
Yeah, there's another one. So I think they are in a tricky spot as a team, and that's kind of what happens when you sign a guy. And
it's really cool having the offensive rookie of the year and the defensive rookie of the year in the same draft class, and then having a guy who could have easily been the offensive rookie of the year had he not tore his ACL and Breece Hall. But guess what? In 4 years, it sucks because you have to pay them all, and they're gonna have to pay deep for these guys.
It's wild because they are classically the worst at drafting too as a team, and for them to have this situation, like they don't know what to fucking do. They've never had that happen before.
Did you all read that that article that came out? Was it about the Jets that their offense is the most expensive currently in the NFL?
I don't doubt that, actually.
Well, I think it's a lot of it is buoyed because of
Oh,
Rodgers.
no. Never mind. I take it back. It's not them. It's the Browns. We talked about them already.
Oh, yeah.
LOL.
I was about to. I actually would have said the Browns, honestly, because of the fact that like Deshaun Watson alone, especially because that first year was kind of like mitigated down to nothing for the suspension. Like I would have figured he would have been really expensive this year.
If you were to take the contract that the Broncos are paying for Russell Wilson and added that to Steelers, would that put them in the running?
I don't think so, because that whole offense is too. They're all draft fees and stuff.
It's true. Yeah.
Mr. Unlimited.
With that in mind, Gatto, do we want to move to the AFC South and talk about them in our divisional breakdown?
I think we do. I think we should. I mean, it's going to be a little tough because I want to say this is the most forgotten division in football. Like I was even saying, who's in this division again? But the funny thing is, I feel like there's a lot of risers, and I think this past year we saw the culmination of years of hard work coming together for the Houston Texans. And I'll make a prediction now. I think that they'll be back in the playoffs this upcoming season and potentially go even further. Do we want to start right there with the Texans? Actually start the best?
Let's start with the good. Let's start with the good.
Yeah.
Let's start with the good. D'Amico Ryan's coming into what now? His third, fourth season?
It's his first year.
Wait. Last year was his first year.
Yeah.
Oh, crap. Yeah, sorry.
It's his second year, guys.
It's second season.
It's second season. What are we doing, guys?
Yeah, I don't know. Why are people listening to us? Well, they're not really here to listen to me.
So, I mean, after a out of the box fantastic first year for D'Amico Ryans, I mean, we all liked the hire too. We thought it was a solid move for them. I mean, it's a guy who played for them forever, and he probably should be in whatever their ring of fame is there. CJ Stroud going there, which a lot of people were kind of, for some reason, as we got closer and closer towards the draft, they were really iffy on him, which was also kind of strange.
Yeah, but it was the test, that cerebral test, that the guy who came out and was like, yeah, it's not accurate also.
Yeah. So, I mean, a pretty successful first year for both coach and quarterback, where there were stretches where this team looked fantastic. They have receivers on that team that are really, really strong. They've got a young and upcoming defense with Will Anderson, who is another top 5 pick for them as well. There is still a lot to like on this team. And I mean, I think the thing that they're doing right now is just trying to add players. And if you look at some of the guys that they've been able to bring onto the team, Danielle Hunter, Danico Autry, even going down to guys like Miles Bryant, Joe Mixon. Yeah, him too. Mario Edwards. There are some
Brown.
Yeah, there are some nice pieces to continue what they're doing there.
Complementary pieces, I think is a good way to put it. This is seeing what you did well and making sure that you bring everything else up around it to support what you were already doing well.
I didn't like the Mixon signing, honestly.
I think they can get 1 year out of him, and that's kind of it.
I felt like they should have broke the bank. If there was any team that should have went for pretty heavy after Saquon Barkley, it should have been Houston, just because I think it made a lot of sense for them. But I don't know. I mean, Daniel Hunter, 2 years, $50 million is fucking crazy. That's a snipe of a deal, man. Getting him for roughly 24.5, roughly on a yearly basis, guaranteed. Roughly, I think it was 48 million. So all but 1 million is guaranteed. Totally worth it for a guy who's like 29 years old. You're not going way over. He's coming off of what, 16 sack season.
Career year 16 and a half.
Man, that is like has potential to be the steal of the class. So D'Amico Archery, very serviceable. Like they're just loading up on that defensive line, which is it makes sense, right? Because it's like it's exactly what they want to do with D'Amico Ryans. Yeah, I would say like I mean I didn't really care too much about the Joe Mixon like, but it's so weird how like Joe Mixon has been like pretty bad over the last few years. I'm surprised, honestly, that like they kind of prioritized him too. So I don't think the money was crazy. Trying to remember what they signed him for.
Who was this?
Joe Mixon.
Oh, it was 3 years, 25.5 million. With a signing bonus, 6 million annual.
That's like 8 per year. I mean, that's probably
8.5.
Yeah, that's more than I would have done for a guy like that. But I mean,
it's mostly guaranteed money.
I'm wondering though,
yeah.
like, are they hoping to? This screams like Dalvin Cook 2.0. Like, they want to have him on this team, but they're really hoping that the other guys that they have, like Dameon Pierce, is able to kind of like finally break through and be the guy that they're hoping that he can. So mixing it up at the beginning of the year, as they would say. But then Dameon Pierce is able to come on and like take over that role. And yeah, I mean, if it's all guaranteed, they can probably just kick him to the curb after the season.
Yeah, and I mean, Singletary's gone, right? So you have to find a piece, and I feel like he's again a complementary piece to Pierce's running style. So it works. I mean, I have no problem with Mixon. In fact, he's usually a consistent carrier. I guess a little trouble with fumbles. But other than that, like he's solid enough. Again, teams are not asking much from their running backs these days. Like that's another half of it. You are a role player, and maybe where the weaknesses lie, Mixon might be a better option. I don't know. Is Dameon Pierce like a good pass catcher at all? Again, I'm not watching enough.
He's got the chops for it, but like I don't think they really like. Whenever he's had the opportunity, he's done pretty well with it. But like, I don't think Dameon Pierce is the guy. Honestly, at least not in Houston. I think he really had a great rookie season, and he 2.9 yards per carry last year.
Yeah, it's pretty rough.
Not good. So Singletary was very productive. So you can't even really blame the offensive line or anything like that. I just look at Joe Mixon over the last few years, man. He's barely over 4 yards per carry, like dragging over. A touchdown production is there, right? But like that's more of a product of the Cincinnati Bengals offense, like Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all those guys getting you into that area. How many times have we watched Joe Mixon literally tiptoe into the the end zone at the 1 yard line? So like that doesn't impress me much.
Very much.
Now I will say he's still
short yardage back.
Well, he still manages to get his longest run of the last few years were 44, 40, 32, 34. So he still has like those kind of turn back the clock games, but to me, not as productive as he was.
Yeah, considering the amount of talent out there this past free agency, it does feel like an underwhelming signing. In probably a position that they needed to fill. So I mean, it could work. It could work out.
I mean, you could also probably. I know that this isn't like a super good running back class when it comes to the draft, but you could probably find somebody in the 3rd or 4th round that could be a nice like piece that would live between a Dameon Pierce and a Joe Mixon, because at the end of the day, like regardless, like. I have the sense that like one of these guys is going to work out, but you can't like hinge on one guy because we see with running backs, they get hurt. So you're going to have to find somebody else too.
I do think that this class is a lot better than people give it credit for, though, as far as the running backs are concerned. I think it's just because like Jonathan Brooks is considered to be like the number one guy, and he's coming off of a torn ACL. So I think that like because of that's the top of it, but like there's guys like I mean to me Jalen Wright, and also Trey Benson. I love Trey Benson out of Florida State. So there's a couple guys that I think are really good, but it's not top heavy really. Like it's more like day 2, day 3 guys that are going to be interesting.
Yeah.
And I think there was some I forget if it was D'Amico Ryans saying something about he's more interested in those second day guys in this upcoming draft. He feels like that's the spot where they're going to excel.
Can I also say one thing too, Gatto?
Of course.
I'm really curious to see what a second full healthy year for John Mechie could be. Because for those who don't know, he was diagnosed with leukemia his first year and pretty much was out for the entire time. And last season, that was his first time back and was not really a terribly involved in the offense. I think Nico Collins and Tank Dell kind of, and I keep wanting to say Owen Daniels, but it's Dalton Schultz. I feel like all those guys kind of look the same. But it was more their show. But I'm really curious to see what it's like for Mechie to come back and go into a training camp like at full speed, because they have Robert Woods listed as the number 3 receiver for that team. And I like Robert Woods, but I feel like he has been in the league about as long as I've turned 21. He has been around forever. And I think they want to see this team start to grow and develop their talent. And I mean, Mechie was a second round pick. So I think they'd want to see something out of him in the next season, at least.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's the thing we're seeing this year, and this is maybe why, some of their offensive signings were underwhelming, is because they realize they have to compete against like a team like the Chiefs. And for them, defense is the most important thing right now. And that is kind of what they got going on with, like the Danico Autry signing. Like
and a second year of Will Anderson too, I think would be
yeah,
nice.
yeah, and they're mindful about who they have to sign later on, right? They're playing it safe, I think, in some ways, because they know what's coming. They got to make sure they keep at least, Will Anderson, Grenard, who's else is on there, like Sheldon Rankings, like these guys are important pieces that they have to keep, around if they want to continue on this track of being successful. Yeah, I think it was kind of good to start with them, because it's weird to see an AFC team being AFC South team being in such like good shape, I think, moving forward, because they I'm shot to shit.
No, I can answer that for you. Like, I think the thing for them is just maintaining consistency, because they were 10-7 last year, which is nice, but they kind of came out of nowhere. And granted, they had a lot of talent that was like influxed or infused into this team, so to speak. And I think the thing they really want to avoid is going 10-7 in the first year and then like
sophomore slump.
Yeah, 7-10 or 6-11, where they kept the same team essentially, and they just had that run of luck that seems like every NFL team has, where like guys get injured after like a second year. And so I think that's where they're trying to like shore up parts of this defensive line, shore up this linebacker core, and ultimately the secondary with guys that aren't like household names per se. Like, these are not like Pro Bowl players, but they're good, solid guys that they can plug in when they need to, and hopefully give a little bit of help to guys like Derek Stingley, who had kind of a funky first year and started to show some progression in the second one. But I think this is a good team overall. I'm really curious to see what that jump looks like, not just from the players, but also from the coaching staff too, because you're going to start to hear the rumors about Bobby Slowick looking for jobs as we progress into next season.
Mm-hmm.
He already had head coaching interviews this time around, but doing it 2 years in a row. And outside of Ben Johnson, he's the one who's gonna get a lot of attention.
And I think you're right, Tom. I think there is a bit of, I think even the Texans kind of know that they got really lucky in how well they hit this past year's drafts, right? The Grenard, the Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Christian Harris, like these turned out to be studs and stars that they might not have even expected to have played out and panned out so well. So for them, it is about that consistency, and you're right. They need to feel like they're establishing a controlled, smart plan for their future, because there is a lot of potential with such a young team like this.
Yeah, I'd be curious too if they use one of their first picks. I mean, their offensive line.
Their first pick is 42nd overall.
Yeah, because they had to trade back in.
No, don't they round. They have a first round pick.
Did that change?
I think they
literally today.
Who did they get it from? No, I could have swore. Hold on.
They have 2 second round picks.
All right, I'm bugging then. Okay.
It's an off day. I know. I got you guys on here on an early day. The week is still young. I mean, I was working till 5 minutes before we started this podcast. So
no, you're all good.
Look at you. Yeah, but my point was like there are young pieces on that offensive line, but there are also some pieces too that could probably get some like youth backing in there. And Q, you would always reference that outside of Laramie Tunsil, there's not a whole lot of like strong offensive line play there.
No.
And looking at a guy like Shaq Mason, who's in age 30 season, at the guard position, right guard position, I'd be curious to see if they're not thinking long term. Like, is there anybody that we could probably find in the draft that could be the future or the heir apparent to the guys in the guard positions?
Yeah, I agree. Well, and that's going to be the hard part is keeping him upright, because like I think CJ did a really good job despite a kind of subpar offensive line. But like, now here it's year 2. They're going to have more tape on him. It's going to be easier to play against him. Still think he's got a chance to be, in the MVP conversation if everything goes well. It's a tough one though, because it's like you do also want to keep adding targets, right? So adding either a dynamic tight end or a wide receiver. I think they did a good job in free agency on defense. Pick 47 should be kind of a sweet spot though if they do want to get one of these offensive linemen. Little off topic, but Tre'Davious White just signed with the Rams. 1 year. 10. Bummer, because I'm
glad it happened when we were recording, because that stuff happens like
right after we finish. Yeah. Pretty good deal for them. I'm bummed because I wanted him on the Giants. So
it'd be like that sometimes.
It do be like that sometimes.
Gatto, any closing thoughts on Houston?
No, I mean I'm interested to see where they kind of go draft wise. Do they hit on a linebacker? Linebackers? Do they go wide receivers? Are we talking, interior linemen? Are we doing a running back here? I want to see what needs they feel are best addressed in the draft and what they go after, and where they feel they're all right in regards to in other positions. That they can suffice with what needs they have at the moment.
Yeah.
I don't know if I want to put all of my eggs in the Dalton Schultz, basket per se, but I think they do have some quality guys on that team that are young that just need some time to grow, right? Mm-hmm. Don't they have Brevin Jordan or something?
Yeah, he did a nice job towards the end of the year. After for the first few years, it wasn't really doing much. So yeah, I mean they have a bunch of guys that are really young, pretty exciting guys on offense. But yeah, I would say certainly, definitely getting the offensive line in order is going to have to be kind of priority number one for them because
Mhm.
it's a tale of this time that ultimately not protecting your quarterback can shorten your career pretty easily.
Yeah, and nobody is interested in seeing Davis Mills, Case Keenum, or Tim Boyle play either.
Please no.
Yeah.
Do we want to move on to the next team?
So we did the good. Should we do the bad?
I mean,
Or we
it's
get
kind
the
of
ugly?
like meh until you hit Tennessee. So the next team would be the Jacksonville Jaguars.
This is an interesting one.
I'm going to just say this, and I don't know if you guys are going to agree with me, but I feel like there's been a lot of waiting around for this team to get good.
There's a lot of expectation for this team to be good, and then they just seem to fizzle out and falter, and in the ways that no one's expecting to.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like Trevor Lawrence, he's going into his 4th year now, and he's like the most forgotten about 2-time 4,000-yard passer in the NFL.
Yeah.
I mean, his numbers in 22 were really good. They kind of fell off in 23 because I feel like the last 2 or 3 games of the season, he was just chronically hurt. And I think that also speaks to a lot of the issues that team had, especially on the offensive line. But I mean, I feel like they're kind of stuck in a place because I don't think that Trevor Lawrence has really taken that step that he was supposed to and was particularly sold with Doug Peterson being there. I feel like he's kind of stayed kind of the same guy.
Dude, you're in my mind. You're literally.
Yeah, what are you thinking?
The exact same thing. It's like I don't know if Doug Peterson is the right fit for this team. I don't know if he's the guy that's gonna make it happen for this team. I don't know if you can get much if he knows how to get much more out of this team. And I think you can see that there's a level of desperateness with the signings that they made. And
I don't love a Gabe Davis as your I saw that and I was like, that's a lot of meh.
It's just weird. Jacksonville is one of those teams that continues to make moves that I'm just like, I don't know if I get that. And I think that's a lot of that is just Trent Baalke, being the GM. But, Trevor Lawrence at this point, I think you can say is not a bust, obviously, but he is certainly not the guy that I think we all thought he was going to be. Like, he still has a chance to be a really good quarterback. Could be top 10, top 12 guy, QB1 type, but I don't think he's not Tom Brady. He's not going to be a Peyton Manning. I mean, again, he's still young enough that I think you have to give it time because he's now 3 years, 3 full years?
Starting year 4, yeah.
I mean, really until 4 years are up that you can't really tell. I'm not as down on Peterson because I think he's brought out the best looking Trevor Lawrence. And I think that just this might just be who Trevor Lawrence is. But yeah, I don't understand the move to let a guy
Calvin Ridley go.
Yeah, but to bring in Gabe Davis of all people, it's like
Devin Duvernay. They're not gonna. What are they doing for you,
Devin Duvernay? Yeah. And again, the amount 3 years, $39 million, it's not a lot in context when you see how much these guys are making, but
how much is he adding to the value of
But for Gabe Davis, I'm like, I just don't know if I get that. I really don't think I get that at all.
I mean, this would be a fantastic landing spot for T. Higgins, no?
It feels like it. It really does feel like it. But the problem is, the Bengals. I don't know if they're going to trade in AFC North, AFC South, but maybe. But I don't know. They just seem okay with these mid-level guys. So I'm just it's
weird. and again, relying on Evan Ingram to be your kind of hybrid wide receiver, tight end, number one threat.
Right.
And
I don't know. This
done better there, but
yeah, I mean, just looking at their depth chart and the guys that they signed, like this screams like we're gonna have to draft a wide receiver in the first round.
They might have to.
Yeah. And they're currently drafting. Was it?
They're probably like right in the middle because they were 98.
Yeah, I was gonna say 15.
I mean, that puts them in an opportunity to get a guy like Brian Thomas, or I mean, if they want to kind of shoot for the moon a little bit, Xavier Legette. I mean, there's options there, but all of those, unless something catastrophic happens with the guys that we had talked about last week, like they're not going to get one of those top 3 guys.
Yeah, true.
Receiver. This could also be a nice place for Brock Bowers if he sticks around long enough, but I think he'll probably be off the board before then.
I'd really like to see Brock Bowers on the Bengals. I'd really like to see that, or the Chargers.
Yeah. I feel like Chargers seems like the spot, but I can't tell. I feel like the Chargers are thinking in an unconventional way.
It sounds like the Chargers to me.
Yeah, it's very on brand for them.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't feel like they've done anything to improve their roster. If anything, they're going in the opposite direction, in my opinion. I mean, the smart thing, they re-signed Josh Allen. Like, that's a good move. So I'll give them that. They're
they got Eric Armstead on their team too, which is an interesting move on their end.
I didn't mind that at all.
Yeah, it's fine. I haven't loved the last couple years from him. He was hurt most of 2022 or parts of 2022, but even then his numbers were a little low. And then last year, again, kind of, I think inconsistency, didn't play the full season, but just a little, I'm going to try and be nice with my words. Like, I'm wondering if this is like a guy who got a bag and now, okay, we're going to kind of coast on this one.
Could be.
I'm not saying he's going to do that, but like, it seems like you're getting him like 2 or 3 years too late.
Yeah, I think from like 2018 to 2021, those were his like prime years, and he's kind of slipped down. I mean, again, injuries, some of them linger, and sometimes they really derail you from being able to produce year to year. But he seems to have had a bit of a bounce back from the previous year. And so, maybe that's what the Jags are kind of hoping, is that this is an upward trend. I mean, he was a first rounder.
True. And they could be trying to hope to get something like a Calais Campbell, get a guy who's been in the league for quite a bit. They sign him and the guy just performs, does miracles for that team. So, I mean, who knows? It's just, I feel like we're kind of talking in circles at this point about this team. Like, there's not really a whole lot. There's not a lot of juice around them, and that's why they're kind of like.
We knew this was going to be a tough.
We wanted to get the AFC South out of the way because there's not a lot of like gusto around this.
No aura at all.
Yeah, there's no Riz.
No Riz. It is not the baby Gronk of divisions for sure.
It's
definitely not.
It's more like Duval instead of Duval.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to shake it up a little bit then. Sorry, go ahead, Q.
No, I was just I did like the Darnell Savage signing for the most part. A couple of things. Mitch Morris, I think, getting a stable center there is good, but yeah, it just feels like this is the if there was any team that really needed to go all in and just like go for it, it felt like it was the Jags, and now it's like you feel more underwhelming with. I'm not endorsing giving Calvin Ridley $92 million, but I would prefer.
I'd feel better if he was there.
Right.
And I don't know. I feel like has this team done enough to protect their investment in Trevor Lawrence? I mean, that's the other thing. Do they have a line? I think they have to focus on that.
The Mitch Moore signing is good. He's a stable center.
Yes.
They brought back Brandon Scherf too, who's been decent for them.
Yeah, I think they're okay offensive line wise. They're not bad offensive line wise, but but also they're in a kind of a prime spot where they're picking. That they could end up getting somebody pretty decent at that spot. I think they're picking
17th.
Yeah, so like Troy Fontenot if he's there, the tackle / guard from Washington would make a lot of sense for me. I think that the versatility would help them. They have a couple guys that I like there too that I think are going to grow into the position. It's going to come down. I mean, look, it's going to come down to Trevor, obviously, but you really want to put him in the best position possible, and I'm just not 100% sure that they're doing that.
And that's where my concern is. Like, do you protect him with an offensive lineman in the first round, or do you give him something to throw at? Right? Where are the needs to see him excel? And that's the big question here.
Well, if that's their plan, because I can understand strategically if the Jags are looking at this receiving class and they're going like, man, it's the best receiving class we've seen in the last few years, and I would agree. And if their goal is to like maybe double down and maybe get like an Adonai Mitchell in the first round and a Malachi Corley in round 3, and that's their plan, is like, why pay Calvin Ridley $92 million when we can bring in these young guys that Trevor can kind of be then it makes a lot more sense. But we'll see after draft night, because that's going to be the big test for me, because if they're willing to invest in the key pieces, that's going to be it. But also it's going to come down to Trevor too, because a good quarterback doesn't need to have 15 Pro Bowl receivers to be successful. They also have to elevate the guys that they have. And I think he's done that also, though, with like a guy like Christian Kirk, who was a mid-level receiver in Arizona and is pretty damn good. I don't know what I would classify him as. Slot.
I mean, he had a nice 2022. I think he just got hurt last year towards the end.
He was injured a lot last year. So I'm gonna just rip up last season for him. But like everybody gave them crap when they signed him to that big contract, and I did too. And I was like, because it didn't really make a lot of sense. But he's been pretty productive for them. Last year, his first year with them, he had over 1,000 yards. 8 touchdowns, 133 targets. He's reliable, very reliable option for them. So seems like he has good rapport with Trevor. So. Calvin Ridley also did look lost in a lot of times. So, like it didn't, there was a lot of times where he was kind of a non-factor in games, and I can't tell if that was the game plan or it was just he was up all night gambling and like couldn't play.
It's not gambling, honestly. It's prop bets. They're different.
Yeah. Tell that to Jonte Porter.
Yeah.
So I want my money back, by the way. I've definitely bet his threes in the past and he's fucked me a bunch. So I want my money back, Porter.
You just betted the wrong way. That's the problem.
Yeah, he just take his unders, right?
If you all were to like immediate guess right now, which position do you think they're going to go after in the draft? And if you are to be so bold, and if you know who that position would be, who do you think they'd be able to get realistically in their position?
You're talking about the Jags?
Mm-hmm.
If I was a betting man,
which you are,
which I am, I'm a gambler. I would probably say corner is going to be where they go, mainly because of the fact that I think one of the biggest issues last year was defense. And this is, again, it's a rich receiving class. And like, it's going to be where you stack these guys. Like, cause like some people are really high on Brian Thomas. Some people are not. Some people are really high on Adonai Mitchell. Some people are not. If there's like a Cooper DeJean there, I think that's like having that hybrid corner / safety type would be pretty interesting. I mentioned Fontenot. If he's there, that's a guy I would be targeting. That's where I kind of see them going. Wiggins, absolutely. I think Wiggins is kind of borderline on whether or not people see him as like a first round pick. But yeah, that's kind of where I think where like for me, if like Brian Thomas is there, I'm probably pulling the trigger on him.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. This is one of the really tougher drafts for me because I don't really know where a lot of these guys are going to go. So I don't.
They
really
all
know
can go
who's
in the
gonna be
top
there.
5, or they all can go in the second round.
And also, like a guy like Latu, if he's there, like again, because he's a guy who could go in the top 10 because his tape is so damn good,
Mm-hmm.
but the medical concerns can push him down. Getting him at 17 would be relatively a heist. So, like, do they pull a trigger on a premium position, an edge rusher?
Yeah.
So I just don't really know where. But J.C. Latham might be there, the tackle from Alabama. So I just I don't know.
Is there a chance of like a Jared Verse?
That's what I was thinking, to be honest with you.
Yeah,
because I'm glad you brought that up, Gatto, because I was going to say Brian Thomas, but I think it would be a stretch for them to draft him that high. I think he's kind of, and I'm sure he's a fantastic football player, and I've watched him play, but like I feel like there's a little bit of like coattail riding with him that makes me a little leery that having Malik Neighbors on one side of the field gives you the ability to kind of take advantage of that, particularly in college. You see that it's more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Pro Football PFF has him listed as the 27th best prospect in the draft. I think that's just a little too. They're drafting a little bit out of alignment to go out and get him. If somebody falls, like you never know with some things. Like if somebody dips down, that could certainly change. But I think
the only thing with Verse though, doesn't he feels kind of like the same player as Josh Allen? Very similar style. No, not it's it's definitely good. No, it's definitely not a bad thing. I also like Jackson Powers Johnson could be a guy I think they could target there. Even though they signed Morse, Johnson could play 2 years at guard and then transition over to center. But yeah, this is the cool thing about the draft. I think everyone knows, like, it's not exactly the order, but everybody knows who's going in the top 10 for the most part. Like, we know these guys are going there. After that, I don't really have a clue, and that's why I'm kind of excited.
Yeah.
And we know JJ McCarthy's going to the Commanders. We know that already. Look at his face, man. I literally started the narrative and it's already starting to build.
You're an absolute monster.
I love it. You should be happy. He's a good quarterback.
Yeah. I would love a Zach Wilson 2.0.
Him and Zach Wilson are nowhere near the same type of prospect. Not even close.
You're right. Zach Wilson did more in college.
Oh, stop. Zach Wilson played in the Mountain West, playing bum-ass teams. JJ McCarthy tore up Division 5.
Yeah, the MAC. He did a great job against them.
Return of MAC.
He played better against Power 5 teams than non-Power 5 teams.
He didn't throw.
There's more than one way to skin a cat, right?
So I'm glad that we went through who Jacksonville would pick, and we have no consensus of that.
Yeah,
so
no.
They are kind of like the grab bag of teams. I think we could say that in the AFC South. Like, you just need somebody. Like, just don't fuck it up.
Pretty much, yeah.
And you know what? I think in this instance where like they have so many areas of need, I could also just see them saying fuck it, like Cooper DeJean. Like, it's a safe pick. It's something that we need. We don't have any problems with it. Like, let it ride.
It feels like, especially because I think with Cooper DeJean, if he was healthy, kind of like going into the process, I think he would have been a top 10 pick based off like tape and like athletic skill set and all that. So like you're getting a guy at a discount, right? Based off his tape, he's top 10 guy who's falling out of the top 10 because of like an ankle injury that, he's just not ready to like run on yet, but like he'll be ready for the season. So, and also the versatility, like guy who could be a top flight corner / at worst, he's going to be like a really, really good safety. So, and for them,
the guy you're not going to have to worry about too.
No, one of the easier and safest prospects in this draft for sure.
Yeah.
So, like, sometimes so you know what? Sometimes there's a layup. Take it. Just take it. You don't have to shoot the jumper every time. You don't have to take it 3 every time. If there's an open layup, take it.
Yeah. All right. Gatto, what you say? You want to move on to Indianapolis?
Oh, yeah. Let's do it.
Okay. I started with Jacksonville, so I want one of you to give your impressions of the Colts.
Man, the Colts are a tough one. It's going to come down to Anthony Richardson, obviously. If he's healthy, they signed Joe Flacco. Great.
That was all I had.
Love seeing Joe Flacco. They really haven't done anything. They re-signed Kenny Moore and Grover Stewart.
Got Michael Pittman back.
Re-signed Michael Pittman.
That's a good move. That is a good move.
I agree.
I like it.
Sometimes it's about keeping your quality, you know.
The good thing about the Colts is that Chris Ballard is amongst one of the best drafting general managers in the league. So as far as I'm concerned, this is one of those situations to me that, like, I don't really worry about what they do in free agency. Kind of like the Packers. Like, I don't really worry about what the Packers do in free agency because they're going to take a defensive tackle in the first round. They're going to take a safety in round 2. And then they're going to win 11 games. You know, it's just like that's how kind of the Colts are too. Not to as much success, but like just in styles of how they draft.
They're the 15th overall pick this year in the draft, by the way. Just to get that out of the way.
Yeah, I think Jared Verse makes a lot of sense for them. So that's where, like, I think Jared Verse kind of like that might be his absolute ceiling or floor, because like I just don't. I think he kind of fits that defense stylish what they do, and it wouldn't shock me if that's the guy. They need more juice on the edge too.
And inherently though, I look at this team though, and I say, you know, how much further do you think they would have went this year if Anthony Richardson had stayed?
Man, that's a tough one.
Because
that's tricky.
Here's the interesting thing about this is that I do feel like they probably would have went a bit further. I don't know how much further.
Yeah.
And that actually that tells me how much they really should be thinking about their future. And I guess it's kind of hard to game plan for a future based around a guy who you didn't get to see much of. Yeah. Right. So how do you make signings to complement that? You know, what do you do?
Yeah. I mean, he only played 4 games, and to be transparent, like as soon as he got hurt, I stopped caring about that team. Like,
yeah. It felt like it was over, right? It was Jover at that point.
It was more over than it ever has been.
Breaking news. It is more over than it's ever been.
I mean, I looked at it in the same way like Peyton Manning missing a season with them. Like all right, this is an off year. We can take it back, but they still won 9 games. And I mean,
in large part, I think the system is really good there. I think Shane Stechen's a good coach. I think if anything, that solidified my feeling that like they made the right decision by hiring him.
Seeing what they were able to do in this like emergency situation where they had to throw Gardner Minshew in there, and you know, doing what they did, that was all coaching, right? Like to scrap what they could out of this year and try to stay as competitive as they did.
I mean, to your point, Gatto, they effectively had to create a new offense because like Gardner Minshew ain't running the same thing that Anthony Richardson is running. Very different offenses. And they have to kind of do that on the fly I think they deserve a lot of credit. But to go back to the first point, like they've just not done enough to bring them in fighting distance or in shouting distance of the Texans. I just look at the Texans roster and I just see a different, better, more equipped team.
It's another tier.
Yeah.
Yeah. They might be competitive in the AFC South minus the Texans, right? Like that's a possibility.
Yeah. But I mean, you could also get like a down year from Jacksonville and a year that just it doesn't work for Tennessee, because I know they've signed a bunch of guys, but we've seen that happen in the past where teams will sign a bunch of free agents and it really doesn't work. They were 9-8. If Anthony Richardson is able to come back, that they could win another game, but you're also hoping that he takes that leap as a passer as well, because pretty limited when it came to passing for him. They really relied on him to just make plays with his legs and score touchdowns that way.
Yeah, to me, the offense under Anthony Richardson wasn't incredibly like it didn't see like it wasn't sophisticated in that sense. I felt like they hadn't fully developed that, and that might be because you are working with a rookie quarterback at that moment, and he's a guy with raw ability. But I'd like to see that this year they grow that playbook in ways that adds a little bit more nuance and sophistication. And we see some better looks that also protect Anthony Richardson, maybe even from himself.
Yeah. Because what's their draft number? You said it was 15. What is it after 15.
That? They draft 15, and then the next time we see
47th and 79.
46th. 47th, the Giants. From Seattle.
Then the Indianapolis Colts website's lying to me.
It definitely is lying to you.
Yeah, fraudulence.
Yeah.
That's why no one trusts the media anymore. But yeah, 46th, 47th, and third round of 79. I mean, again, kind of the no man's land of the NFL draft.
Very much a where do you go? What do you do? I mean, this seems like another cornerback.
This could also be a fantastic landing place for Cooper DeJean, too.
Yeah. Q, you've been on mute for a little bit here.
You've just been yelling.
Yeah, obscenities. We can tell.
There's a dog barking, so I've been trying to like mute myself when I'm not talking, and then I forget. I think Cooper DeJean would actually be a great fit for them too.
Yeah.
But what are you seeing on the Colts website right
now? Where was it? Let's see.
Surprised.
It's on their draft page. Colts hold number 15 overall pick in the 2024 NFL draft. JJ Stankowitz.
Stankowitz.
Yeah, the full NFL draft order will be revealed following the awarding of. Oh, it's a compensatory selection. So this came out in January 8th, and I guess something got moved around.
Okay.
Thanks, JJ.
Thanks a lot, JJ.
And there it is.
Stankowitz. Okay. Yeah, I think there's definitely some opportunities for the Indianapolis Colts. Like the thing is, like, with the offensive line, like, clearly they could use an upgrade too on the offensive line. But also, I don't think a lot of their issues with Richardson getting hurt was because of the offensive line. I think Richardson just needs to protect himself better.
Yeah, I mean, he played a little off the chain. So
listen, I love it, man. I love the way he plays, man. He is a like brute force type of guy. So I give him like so much credit for that, but like, yeah, he's gotta chill out, man. Like there was so many times I was just cringing because I'm like, oh, what is this guy doing? Just throwing his health to the wind and just didn't care. So I love him for that, but like, definitely got to protect yourself better.
Yeah, for sure.
Jinx.
Fucking.
It would be kind of interesting though to see them, make a wild pick out here. Like, if it could happen, I don't think it would, but like a Brock Bowers round 1 would be a great piece for them.
I don't know if he's going to be there though.
I don't think so either.
I agree with you. Like, I agree with you.
They had a tight end.
Yeah, I mean, Dallas Clark was the last time they had somebody of like real talent. Maybe Eric Ebron, maybe.
What was that Stanford dude? Kobe Fleener. Put some respect on Kobe Fleener's name.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. I mean, Dallas Clark was in the league for like a zillion years, though. So,
yeah,
that's my childhood.
I liked Kobe Fleener.
That's my childhood.
I had a sick name.
I would be curious to see if they would be willing to trade up and make that happen, because I could also see them like saying like, "Hey, we're kind of in like we're in limbo right now. We'd be okay if we traded back and maybe got some additional like picks, and we'd be able to go after, fall back to a place where they're like able to get a Brian Thomas or an Adonai Mitchell, because those guys are probably tail end of the draft. And I mean, they could also do other things too. Like Ladd McConkey is right there. I'm not super high on him, but it'd be like that sometimes. Or
first round?
No, like tip of the second round. But I mean, you've seen guys.
I like McConkey. I think he's underrated in the sense that I think people have been trying to do the like, oh, he's just a white guy receiver, slot receiver, Jim Rat, Julian Edelman, type of guy, and like he's so much more than that.
Well, I was gonna say, like, I don't have a problem with that necessarily, but they could probably also just wait and get like a Ricky Pearsall.
Love Ricky.
Yeah, and I think, dare I say, it might not be a bad idea to link Anthony Richardson up with another Florida Gator.
That's true.
May that be too bold?
No, I think you're onto something there for sure.
Stable genius there. Okay, so I'm gathering this is another team we have no idea who they would draft. Like, we have an idea, but we have no idea.
I mean, again, like, this is the beauty of the latter part of this draft, is that like I don't think anyone really has like a real firm grasp on where anybody's going. So it's kind of the beauty of it, but I don't know.
And that is how we are going to leave
Anthony Gatto.
And that is how we're going to leave it with the Indianapolis Colts. We don't know. Last, and in this case, least, is the Tennessee Titans. They were the last team to finish. They were the last place team of the AFC South with a 6-11 record. Of all of the teams in this division this offseason, they have made a lot of moves. They've gone out and signed a lot of guys. And I really think, like, with a new coach, they're really trying to go out and make something happen. They actually made a trade for L'Jarius Sneed and then gave him a extension as well. So, Q, what are your thoughts on some of the moves that Tennessee has made, and do you think they're going to matter?
It's clearly, what I will say is that it clearly feels like they have a strong support of Will Levis. Because like, you don't make these type of moves if you're like resetting them, resetting yourself, right?
Yeah.
You don't go out and get L'Jarius Sneed. You don't go out and get, Calvin Ridley and all these guys if you're like, we're rebuilding. So I give them credit for going for it. And I think there's something like noble to that idea of like going for it. It may not work out because I think $92 million for Calvin Ridley is a lot.
Yeah.
But it could work out for them. And I haven't really looked at the structure of the contract yet, but I imagine it's probably structured in a way that's not too terrible. That's what it's going to come down to for me, because at the end of the day, and like Sneed was super underrated last year. I don't think people gave him enough credit for how good he was last year, and like how it benefited the Chiefs so much to be able to just kind of sit there and let him go on the number one wide receiver or whatever team they were facing and play that cover 2 defense, because they knew that he was going to be there to just lock down that guy. And then, and then having, the other talented DBs on that team, but like, he was the engine that made that team move on defense. So
right.
I think the Chiefs are actually going to probably feel it more than, than anybody else. But I I really do like the Snead signing. It's a good gamble to take. I'm just more of like, I think I'm more just like, I don't know if I believe, Will Levis is the guy, that Mayo Eden son of a bitch. But it's just, I don't know. But I like that they're going for it. If anything,
yeah, I think there's
appreciate
something to be. I think there's something to be said and kind of applauded for a team that
Yes.
is willing to just try.
Yeah, there's fucking going for it, man.
My concerns kind of lie in the same bracket as yours of like, yeah, but you're going for it with Will Levis.
They're also doing well. The good thing also is that they're not financially tied to Will Levis. Will Levis was a round 3 pick. Am I correct? Round 4?
Yeah,
Somewhere in that
3.
line. Round 3, round 4. So they're not financially tied to him at all, right? So like the thing is, I think they're also doing is they're structuring their team that they're going for it with him. But if it doesn't work out, they are setting themselves up, because I don't know if you've seen the news. Dak Prescott is not getting a new deal from the Cowboys and will be a free agent at the end of the season. There's a chance, I suppose, that he hits the market, and if the Titans feel, or if they end up getting a number 1 pick in the draft this year, they go looking for next year. So I think there's options, at least. I think they have options. So they're not tied down to anything. They're just kind of trying to build a roster, but it's aggressive. It's very aggressive. But I mean, really, you are giving Will Levis the best chance to succeed here, because now with Calvin Ridley, if Trey Burke can turn into anything, and then if they add another guy in free agency or in the draft, and with what Diop is also there still.
So he had a sneaky 1,000-yard season too.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say that he's still the same guy, but like clearly not completely washed or anything. So I definitely think that there's a chance. There's a chance that Tennessee could be one of those teams that kind of just makes life difficult for people.
Yeah, I mean, in fairness to Will Levis too, we've seen guys come in and struggle and just feel kind of overwhelmed about the game. But one of the things that I think he deserves some credit for is that he still had a 2-to-1 touchdown interception ratio, which, I mean, that a team at times was like their offense was really just stuck in the mud. And regardless of Derrick Henry or Ryan Tannehill, I bet they're glad they've gotten rid of the Tannehill contract and that they're not like doing that again. My concern, and again, I hope Will Levis plays well, but if he doesn't or gets hurt, oh, buddy, it gets real interesting at quarterback after him with Mason Rudolph and Malik Willis.
Yeah.
Yikes.
I mean, you can say that about most teams, though. I think you can look at most teams and say they're cooked if their quarterback gets hurt. But I mean, I do like the new coaching staff too. I mean, look, listen, I've had critics. I had my critiques of the Bengals offense, but I've heard good things about Brian Callahan. So it like makes sense. It made sense to me, at least. I think the signing for him, and then Denard Wilson was my favorite coach of the circuit for defense, and he ends up signing there with defensive coordinator. So I think their staff is pretty good. That it's gonna set Will Levis up for success, at least. So
yeah. Last thing, and maybe Gatto, I want to get your thoughts on this. Like Tony Pollard, like for 3 years, 3 years, 24, I think was the deal. Like, how are we feeling about that?
I mean, from all interviews that I've read, I think the Colts, the Titans really bought in to him as a player. McCarthy has like regret that he's gone, says he's going to be missed in that locker room. I wonder if he wasn't the right fit for the Cowboys, and that's purely what it is. And he might be a better fit there. I mean, it's big shoes. He came into a position where it's literally big shoes, right? Like maybe the biggest shoes to try to fill positionally, I don't know if anybody. I mean, I guess fans are going to feel the difference when when it's not Derrick Henry, right? Like they're always just going to compare for the next couple years whoever they put in that position. But they might also be surprised because he's going to have a level of agility that Derrick Henry didn't necessarily have. So I'm interested to see what happens, and I'm glad he's just not going to be running up scoreboards on the Giants anymore. So it's cool.
I honestly think like I don't know what to think about him, and because like there were so many times last year where he looked so fucking terrible, but then he would have these games where he looked great. So I'm gonna chalk it up to that he might have been not fully recovered. Like those like did he not tear his ACL or like what was his injury? He had like a foot injury the year before.
Yeah.
Sometimes these like lower body extremity shit can take a year before you're like fully right. You're fully 100% again. And I think also I wonder how much the Cowboys franchising him played into his mindset during the season because like I think he knew they were going to DeMarco Murray him and just like run him into the ground because they really didn't have anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
So I think was he kind of pulling back a little bit, waiting because he wanted to get his paycheck, which I mean I fully understand.
Yeah, don't want to be used goods by that point.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean he secured himself an $8 million per year deal, for 3 years. So I think he did what he felt like was he needed. So I don't know. I like the swing again. Like this is how I felt about Tennessee the entire time. I'm like, okay, I like the swing. I don't know if it's gonna work. Like it feels like it may not work at all. But like I appreciate you taking the swing. So I don't know. I don't know how to exactly feel about it.
It's been the most interesting off-season free agency that I've seen out of the Titans in years. Right?
For sure.
I mean, I like a lot of what they're doing, right? And I know you guys have probably already gone over this. I like a lot of where their signings are, where their head is. This is a team that kind of wants it now. They want to be relevant now, which is for me, it's a weird moment because I think you see the competition rising around you, and you think this is the time to do it, right? Same with the Bears. I feel like the Bears have relevant teams around them, and they've decided, no, this is the time, right? Like when the Lions are good and the Packers are
they can't coast anymore. They can't really just coast.
That's true too. But yeah, some of the big signings they made, I don't know how much of a difference. Like the thing that you said earlier about Calvin Ridley, and I'm probably backtracking on what you guys already said.
No, it's all good.
Is that looking lost on the offense thing in Jacksonville? Like, are we going to see that again? I don't know what the plan is offensively for them, right? Like, this is a total new regime, so he might fit into their game plan, and we don't know. And they might do very well this year because no one really knows what to expect out of this team.
Yeah, it's all really driven again from the Will Levis perspective. But as you guys were talking and just going back to Tony Pollard a little bit, I'm wondering if there is like there's a buying low, like low risk, high reward from him that they saw. Like this is a guy that even in kind of a down year last year still found a way to get 1,000 yards. And I mean, I think they also need some good personalities in that locker room because it's a very young group right now. DeAndre Hopkins is obviously the oldest person there. But again, not a whole lot of guys that have familiarity with high functioning locker rooms. And having a guy like Tony Pollard, DeAndre Hopkins there, and some of the other names that they're able to bring in, L'Jarius Sneed being another one, like this gives them an opportunity to kind of reset. This is a new culture. We're focused on winning here. If that's the case, why'd they bring Tony Pollard in? But sorry, that was a Cowboys jab. But I'm wondering if they're hoping like, hey, he had kind of a down year. We can kind of get him on a deal and just get the best out of him while he's here.
Yeah, I mean, he was kind of a bargain in comparison to some of the other running back signings, right? He's
True.
about
Yeah.
7.2 annually. So and he's only 10 and a half guaranteed. So that's actually really good for them.
Yeah. I'm looking up how much that Derrick Henry contract was. Yeah, 50 milli. So
yeah. And considering, I think they overpaid for Calvin Ridley, but time will tell.
I mean, they probably did that considering options left.
Yeah,
they're probably not going to be able to make a deal with.
He's only guaranteed about half of that, so that's the other half. That's
I think Snead was one of the best corners in football last year, if not the best. So I think as far as that's concerned, they got a deal on. They got a deal on that. So
right.
Yeah. The Chiefs had to make a very tough decision, and it was signing one guy versus not being able to sign for the next, right? And so they had a part. I don't think they wanted to, right? But he deserves that money. So, that's for sure.
I did have. I mean, I know, like, I can't judge, obviously, but because it's different organizations. But this is my thing about the Titans that's really funny, because, like, obviously Rand Carthen's involved now. He's the GM. It's not the same GM, but like they had AJ Brown, and they weren't willing to give him $90 million.
Yeah,
they trade him, and now they have Calvin Ridley for $90 million, and it's like, I'd rather have AJ Brown any day of the week.
Sure. But I think the one part of that is that they're looking at next year's salary cap, and they're looking at how it goes up, and they're saying 90 million's acceptable now because the numbers are going up, right? The price of the brick just got higher.
I mean, I will say that, like, clearly, like, yeah, the salary cap's going up and everything like that. It's just like, man, I would have much preferred to have AJ Brown. But again, I can't blame Rand Carthen for that. He was not even here when that happened. Like, I imagine he would not have traded AJ Brown. So, but you know how it goes.
Yeah. Do we want to do just a quick prediction of who they might be looking at in the draft too? I know that we're almost at time here. Easy.
I mean, I think that's going to be, if he's available for them. I think that's where it's going to be, honestly. It just makes sense because, like, there's going to be there's a real chance that we could have 3 receivers, 3 quarterbacks all go in the top 6, and then they're picking at 7, where it's like anybody outside of that sphere is going to be up for the taking. So I just look at that offensive line, and a lot of moving parts there, and maybe Dallas Turner if they're feeling spicy. If they feel like he might be, his upside's high enough, but to me, it just feels like a Joe Alt pick if he's there. It all depends on what the Chargers do, because if the Chargers trade out, or if they just sit there, because if they sit there, there's a real chance that they just take Joe Alt there. But I would predict Joe Alt right now.
This seems like a team that kind of already knows exactly what they're doing in the draft because of how aggressive they were in free agency.
Yeah.
Right. So they had already made up their mind draft wise, and they said, can we buy? Right. That's not filling those positions. So, that's what I get a sense of, at least.
Yeah. Smorgasbord of opportunity for them.
They could use some D-line help. That's for sure.
Yeah, I mean, in edge defenders too, like they're kind of like a all hands on deck situation. I feel like we've mentioned Cooper DeJean like 1,000 times in this. He would also be fine there too.
I think Quinton Mitchell, if they're going to go if they are going to go corner, I think Quinton Mitchell would be a really good pick there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The last thing I was going to say too, like, I think they're going to miss out on all like the big offensive talent. I think they're just outside of that window.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Offensive line, they have it, but like if they're looking to add a receiver, I don't think to eventually replace DeAndre Hopkins. I think they're just outside. They did just enough not to suck enough to get into the top 6.
Yeah.
Well, here's the weird thing too, though, because I look at this team and I go, well, if we compare offenses to offenses across the AFC South, they're not looking too far out, right? Like maybe Houston's got an edge on them, but like there's a lot of big ifs on that Jacksonville receiving core. The running game is ETN and nothing else over there. Like I don't think they have anything to really fear from the Colts either in that standpoint. I don't think they have a great receiver room. So they're looking at right now, currently looking like a competitive team before the draft in terms of personnel. Now, what happens at the draft is going to change all of that for most of these teams and where their positional players on offense go. But offensively, I mean, quarterback is a big if to me. I don't trust any of their options at the moment.
Yeah, we were just talking about that once if something happens to Will Levis or he has to get benched, like you're putting it in the hands of Mason Rudolph and the other guy that came before Will Levis and Malik Willis, and it also a couple of problems with those. So it'll just come down to, I mean, if that's the case, if the biggest concern is that like they need to keep Will Levis upright and healthy, then they should just draft Joe Alt or like draft him, maybe trade up, get another offensive lineman, like build a line that is like a wall that will protect all things him.
I dig it.
Yeah. How are we feeling on the AFC South?
Crushed it.
Yeah.
I think the South
boring ass division as far as I'm concerned.
I think we're all kind of in agreement on that one. And
it was a delightful surprise this past season.
Yeah.
I mean, Houston.
Yeah. I mean,
Houston's probably the only good team in that division, like that I really like enjoy talking about. Every other team is just like, oof.
Yeah, it's every team is kind of going through a glow up right now, except for the Jags. But I think that gives us some time to just leave it there, and to end this episode. So thanks everybody for sticking with us. I know that we talked about a number of different things, and we had a real good breakdown of the AFC South, and we're looking forward to talking about another division next week. Also, we talked a lot about the rules changes as well and the implications for that. If you all want to help us out, give us your thoughts. Let us know what you think about some of those rule changes. And also if we are on the money or wildly off the mark when it comes to our thoughts on the AFC South. Last thing I'd like everyone to do is if you can do us a favor and like and subscribe on your favorite social or streaming platform, as well as on our YouTube page. Tell your friends about it who are Jacksonville Jaguars fans who are stuck in Duval and can't get out.
Duval.
Yeah. If they think that we are offensive and hurting their feelings, or they're Tennessee Titans fans, like let's hear from them. Like, let me get your opinion, because to be transparent, I'm not tuning in every Sunday to watch Tennessee Titans games.
Yeah, but if you want to do that, we urge you to join our Discord. It is probably your best source for up-to-the-date news. We've gone out, we've done the hard work, we've found and we've linked popular beat writers and sources across the NFL into team channels. Each team has its own channel where you can put your thoughts, share them, talk about them, spread them like a contagion. We don't care. We just want you to have a great place to go and get the up-to-date news. And you can do that on our Discord. So please come join us there and tell us how much you love or hate our podcast.
Couldn't have said it better myself. All right, folks, we are out of here. We will see you next week.
Bye.